In this video, we're going to see how we can generate some random numbers. So earlier on, we learned that we can use some methods in the math class, math.pow to raise a number to a power, math.sqrt to take the square root of a number, math.abs, the absolute value, to get the absolute value of a number. Now, math also has a method called random, and what it does, it returns a random number. It's a random double in the range of 0 to 1. So the problem with this random method is that it always gives you a number in the range of 0 to 1. And if I'm playing like a dice game and I want to generate a random number from 1 to 6, because a dice has numbers from 1 to 6, what I need to do is do this mathematical operation where I say, okay, now that math.random value that you're going to give me, I'm going to multiply it by 6 so that I get it up to 6 values. And so if it's a 0 and you multiply it by 6, the lowest value is going to be 0. Now, if it's a 1 and you multiply it by 6, what you're going to get back out of it is a 6. So basically, math.random times 6 is going to give you a number between 0 and 6. And anything in the middle, like if it gave you 0.5, then 0.5 times 6 is 3. So here, when I'm multiplying by 6, what I'm doing is I'm expanding that range so that instead of being just 0 to 1, it's going to be 0 up to the number I am multiplying by. Now, because math.random returns a double, which is a decimal number, it's not, if I multiply it by 6, I'm not going to always get a whole number out of it. So what I'm doing here is I'm casting that value to an int. So I'm casting it so that whatever is after the decimal gets kind of thrown away. So this is how you can kind of do a hack using math.random to generate random numbers in a range. Now here, because this smallest value it's going to give me is 0, that means if someone throws a dice, they might get the value 0. Well, that's not possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 1. So whatever value it gives me, I'm going to add 1 to it so that I get 1 after. Okay, so we multiply by 6 so that we get all the numbers between 1 and 6. Okay. Now, that's one way you can do it using math.random. That's not how I prefer to do it, but I wanted to show it to you because some people do use it. Instead, I like using the random class. So there's a class called random, just like there's a class called file and scanner and file writer and print writer and string. There's also a class called random. It is part of the util, so it's part of util just like scanner is. And the way you use it is that you create a random object. It doesn't take anything as input, so you say random, some variable equal to new random, and then it has these methods. And the one that I'm mostly concerned with is the next int, because the next int, what it does is you give it a number, a whole number, an int, and it's going to give you it's going to generate random numbers in the range from 0 up to that number, but it doesn't include that number. So it's basically giving you 0 up to n minus 1. So if I was to give it to 6, it'll give me numbers from 0 up to 5. So here is an example of how you can use the random class. So the first thing is you import java.util.random. Here what I'm doing is I'm asking the user whether they want to play or not. So I create a scanner, I create my random object, and I am assuming they want to play. So I'm starting off a string with y, and while, again, is equal to y. Initially it is y, so it's going to be yes. So it's going to start off and start playing. It's going to say rolling the dice, and it's going to generate 2 random numbers. Because the values that I want have 6 values, I say next int with 6, and then I'm going to add 1. Why? Because next int, as we saw in the previous slide, gives you a number out of beginning with 0, and I don't want 0, so I'm going to do that hack and add a 1 to it. So I'm generating a random number, and I'm generating another random number for my 2 die, and then I print out the values, and I ask them, do you want to roll again? And whatever they type in, I'm going to read it in. And if they said yes, I'm going to roll again and show them the values and so on. So this is an example of how you can use the random object to generate random numbers to play a game with the computer. Now, I'm not going to ask you about math.random and the random object on an exam, but you will be expected to use it in a classwork assignment, in a programming assignment, or on the final project. For the classwork that you're going to do today, what you're going to do is you're going to ask the user for two files. So you're going to ask them for the name of a file to read from and the file to write out to. And what you're going to do is you are going to basically take whatever the user was in, whatever was in the input file, and you're going to write it out back to the output file without the commas. So you're going to read it in as a string, and you are going to write out that string back without the commas. Now, we didn't learn any methods on the string to remove some kind of characters. So what I want you to do is you're going to have a while loop that reads from the file. So if the file has 3 lines in it, you're going to have a while loop that's reading from the file. Every time you read a string from the file, you can use a for loop that goes through every single character. Do I know how many characters are in the string? I can find out using the dot length. So I can write a for loop that starts with int I equals 0 up to the length. And then I can get the character at, the char at 0, char at 1, char at 2 in that for loop. So basically you're going to go through the line character by character. If the character is not a comma, you're going to print it to the output file. You're going to write it to the output file. If it's a comma, you are not going to write it to the output file because you don't want it in the output file. What are you going to do if it's a comma? You're going to count it. So that at the end, you're going to print to the console window to system.out how many commas were there. Now, to test this on HackerRank, we need a file. So what I want you to do is add this code to the beginning of your main method. So this is the code that will actually create a file. So what is it doing? It's creating a file that has 2 lines. The first line has this content, and the second line has this content. So your file that you're testing with on HackerRank is going to be one that contains 2 lines, and this is the content of it. Don't write code that is saying, oh, here I see 1, 2, 3 commas, so I'm just going to print a message that says detected 3 commas. This will result in a 0. So yes, you do know the contents of the file here, but assume you do not know the contents of the file. Write it so that it works with any file. And then you have the programming assignment for chapter 11 here also that you're going to use HackerRank to test. And when you're doing this one, you're going to also have these 3 lines that you're going to add to the beginning of your main method so that it creates the file that HackerRank will test your code against.